Welcome back to Exceptional Undergrads, a podcast where we interview successful students and explore how they achieve such successes at a young age. Be sure to check out our show notes at exceptionalundergrads.com for all resources and show notes mentioned in today's episode. Today, I welcome Jakub Drwal to the show. Jakub just finished up his junior year at Notre Dame, where he's an Evans Scholar. Jakub has started up multiple businesses, including a dorm room pizza restaurant, and he's currently working on a startup centered around commercial real estate. I enjoyed my time speaking with Jakub, and I hope you will extract as much value as I did. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Jakub Drwal. Jakub, welcome to the show.
Hey Jack, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. I'm excited to have you here today. Would you like to start us off here and just tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the stuff that you're working on right now?
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thanks again for having me. Really excited to be on the show. I've watched a few of the podcasts and listened to them. Excited to be on it. So yeah, my name's Jakub Drwal. I'm a junior here at University of Notre Dame studying finance and real estate. Actually here on this Chick Evans scholarship, so very fortunate for that scholarship. And here at Notre Dame, I actually started RealBlock Exchange, which is a commercial real estate exchange. But before that, I actually started Siggy Pizza, which was a pizza parlor in my dorm room, and we actually moved it out to the hall pizza kitchen. And before that, even I started JJLD, which was a live animals snake brokerage firm. So that's a little bit about me. Very fortunate to be in the position I am. Uh, Very exciting times, a lot of uncertainty, but overall, really excited about the future.
Did you just say you started up a snake firm? Like
Yeah,
the animal snakes?
yeah, that was a very interesting story that occurred actually in high school, my senior year. I had a good buddy of mine who I knew through a golf course that actually bred snakes in his parents' basement. And he was telling me about how he was facing a distribution problem of which he couldn't exactly sell the snakes at high quality prices. And so that's how JJLD started, was that I was like, hey, I'm sure I can figure out how to sell these snakes for you. And we ended up running a snake brokerage firm for like 8 months that helped pay for a lot of my college tuition. So very fortunate in that regard.
That's crazy. Where are you from originally?
Yeah, I grew up outside the suburbs of Chicago by O'Hare. So
Mm,
lived in the suburbs all my life.
sweet. So you guys just selling snakes out there apparently.
Yeah, it was interesting dynamic. The Looking back at it, I learned a lot of lessons, but post pandemic, there was a lot of stimulus checks, and people had a lot of expenditure capital to spend on miscellaneous items. And so, when you think about it, who people love spending money on pets, and so that's not as it includes dogs. And it just so happened that there was a really high premium multiple on exotic pets, particularly snakes. And we were just able to tap in it because my buddy knew all the players in the Chicagoland area. And so we were buying from the Chicagoland area players, and then we were selling them online to nationwide. And our story got so crazy at some point, we actually ended up importing snakes from Germany because we worked with a broker out in Florida who had the necessary licenses to import said snakes, and we ended up distributing them across the nation with that broker. So overall, very interesting thing I did as a young senior in high school, and that I learned so much about entrepreneurship, and that's kind of where I caught the entrepreneurial bug. After that, it I would say, a couple months after the stimulus checks ended, people started kind of realizing that they have to go work for their money again. It That business kind of dried up, so that's kind of when I left. But overall, I learned a lot, had a lot of fun with it, and it's always a fun story to tell at a bar.
For sure. That's awesome. All right, so you pivoted from selling snakes and distributing them to starting up a pizza place on campus from a dorm room, and that has blossomed. What's the story behind the pizza place here at Notre Dame?
Yeah, so I started Notre Dame in 2021, fall of 2021. So Notre Dame was kind of reeling still from the pandemic and the effects it had on food service. And so after 8 p.m., none of my buddies could get food on campus because all the food retail was closed. So what they ended up doing was either Ubering Eats food offside of campus or walking to the nearest off-campus joint, which is like a 30-minute walk. And so, yeah. And so when you think about that, you have this huge opportunity to provide food for your friends and people who are just a captive audience because they have no other alternative. And so I was like, hey, I like making pizza. Let's try something here. And I kind of just started making pies. I bought a few crusts from Walmart and they sold out in a few minutes. So then I started buying more pies from Walmart, sold out in a few minutes. Ended up getting in contact with a food distributor in South Bend, Indiana called Stan's Food Service. And I started having a truck come every week because we were doing enough volume and to guarantee a truck. And so that was really interesting. And I learned a lot again. I was not in the food service business before that, so I had to learn how food margins work, how do you manage employees, how do you set up quality, how do you ensure that you're complying with health codes, all that stuff. But I actually ended up stepping down from that business again this past semester just because I realized that I'm actually doing a service to the hall, and it makes sense for me to transition that responsibility to someone younger. And so that kind of I've been mentoring this one freshman who's taken over Siggy Pizza now, and he runs it as his own business. Therefore, that allows for him to kind of continue the tradition of Siggy Pizza going forward, which is the name of the pizzeria.
That's sweet. Just making pies and it's scaled. I've noticed that that's kind of so far out of the two things that you've done, you've kind of just sort of gotten into stuff and you've learned along the way, and then it's just kind of scaled from there. Is there anything that really sets you apart, you think, from a learning perspective that you could give people tips on in these situations?
One thing I've learned is that it's okay to make mistakes as long as you make those mistakes knowing that you're going to have to learn from them. And
Mm.
whenever I go out and do something, I try to learn as much as I can before doing it. But I always know that there's going to be some sort of contingency that I can't account for. Therefore, have to be adapting. And so, if there was one thing that I would tell anyone to actually think about before doing is like, how am I going to be adapting? How am I going to be moldable in the sense that I'm not going to come in stiff? I have to be flexible. And so if you're flexible, if you're willing to admit mistakes and you're willing to pivot at the spot, you're good. If not, it's not going to work out.
How much of that flexibility do you think comes from personal accountability and responsibility from your own actions?
I think it all comes back actually to starting caddying when I was 13 years old. I
Mm.
started caddying because I wanted to play club volleyball, but my parents couldn't afford it. And so I needed a job. And if you try to find a job at 13 years old, there's not many places that hire other than the caddying. So just very fortunate for me that my local caddy master came to my middle school and was like, hey, I'm hiring. And so I ended up signing up for caddying, even though I had no clue what golf was and never stepped foot on a golf course. So to your last question, I had no clue of being on a golf course carrying someone else's bag, and I made so many mistakes. But I was pretty determined, so I learned from those mistakes and I improved upon them. And so when I think about everything I've done so far in my life, it's always like, yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing at times, like getting myself into things, but I'm determined to learn. I'm determined to improve myself. And I realize that everything I do is a learning opportunity and a stepstone to be better. So it all comes back from caddying.
Mm. So the caddy position was able to switch your mentality. Was that, would you say that was more of your turning point from a learning perspective of mindset?
For sure. When you caddy, you are usually caddying for very successful people. And so, because, you know, who are you playing golf? Who's playing golf at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, right? It's either retired folk or very successful business folk. And as a caddy, you get to know that your golfer really well. So you get to ask them a lot of personal questions you wouldn't get to ask otherwise. And I learned so much from the members and guests I caddied for that I realized that they all were very driven people. They all were go getters and they all were willing to make mistakes in this pursuit of success. And so when I think about that, applying that to my life, that's exactly what I try to do. I try to be a go-getter. I try to learn as much as I can, and I realize that I got to go start doing things, even if I make a few mistakes along the road.
That's something that I'm personally working on myself, especially, I mean, with Exceptional Undergrads. I had this as an idea for like forever at this point, a couple of years that I've been working on it. And always like planned, like, okay, like this is what I'm going to do. And like, I just need to execute all of this plan. And I found myself stagnant. I couldn't like move. I couldn't do anything. And I think that that's a position that a lot of other undergrads and college students are in because it's tough to take that jump knowing that there might be failure, jumping in this uncertainty of, oh my gosh, like this is fun, I want to do it, but I don't know how to do it. And it almost brings along this almost imposter syndrome that I've felt even myself sometimes. And I know in other podcasts I've been like, imposter syndrome, it's not really that real, like just kind of do it. But I mean, I've felt that sometimes myself, honestly, of I actually don't know really what I'm doing, but it's working out yourself and really understanding like, oh, like it's okay, like I'm going to learn stuff now and I'm going to move forward so that I can become this person who's doing the rest of the stuff. So I think that that's fantastic, and I'm glad you had that experience as a caddy. I know myself, even as a golfer now. I used to play baseball and retired, and now I golf. Haven't had a lot of caddies or anything, but I know if you shoot that distance wrong and the dude flies the green or something, I mean that could be an interesting conversation. So there is some pressure there, just like in entrepreneurship, I'd say.
Yeah, I've been guilty of that, doing that once or twice.
Myself as well. I'll shoot my own distance, and the next thing I know, it's way past the green. I'm like, oh, geez, that's not good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
for
sweet.
sure.
Let's let's dive in a little bit more. I know you had a couple of these businesses before, but now you're working on RealBlock Exchange, which has to do with real estate and whatnot. Can you fill us in on that? And I know you also have raised over $600,000 for this business. I'd love to hear more about the back end of stuff as well there.
Yeah, for sure. So I started RealBlock Exchange after working in real estate private equity. And the idea about behind RealBlock Exchange is thinking about one, access to commercial real estate, right? So overall, commercial real estate market is very opaque in the sense that it's illiquid, non-transparent, and in order to actually invest directly into commercial real estate assets, you have to be an accredited investor who can get access into the right JVs or limited partnerships. So overall, you and I are not buying pieces of commercial real estate, right? And the other part of it actually came realizing that institutional asset managers are always looking for ways to raise new capital or to actually recycle capital that they already have. Hence, I was thinking about like how can I bridge those things together? And at the end of the day, I realized that the only way to effectively bridge, you know, sponsors of real estate assets, so these institutional asset managers, and then the average day investors, is that there needs to be an exchange. And so the analogy I always use is the Nasdaq for real estate, and that's what RealBlock Exchange is to be, right? You and I can purchase shares of commercial real estate that are professionally managed, and they're also very well capitalized because these institutional asset managers put their name behind it. And so when I started thinking about like who are my competitors, I realized that there's a lot of crowdfunding platforms. And so I'm not going to mention them on this podcast, but they all allow for you to invest on their platform. They have these assets, but they don't really solve the problems that I listed out initially, right? The deals are pretty opaque. You don't really know what the true value of that real estate is, and you don't really know who the sponsor is behind the screen, right? They're not always properly vetted. They're not always, the most accredited sponsors. So there's a lot of question marks on this platform. And lastly, at you still need to be accredited to access those platforms. So we really don't solve the problem there. And so diving into the business, we actually started off as a tokenization platform, hence the real block, right? Kind of a blockchain type of thing. But we quickly realized after talking to many industry experts that blockchain isn't necessarily the solution. It's just a way of achieving said solution. And to touch on that essentially is that blockchain is a technology in which you can use to, make things accessible, but it's not the way you make things accessible. The way you make things accessible is actually by fractionalizing it, issuing shares, and then having still a professional sponsor within to actually take care of said asset, because especially in commercial real estate, the asset itself doesn't make you the money. It's the management of said property that makes you the money. And so there always will need to be that manager. And at the end of the day, we've realized a lot of things. We've pivoted a lot of ways. And we're actually really excited because we're actually working on our first asset securitization right now. So hopefully by the fourth quarter of 2024, you'll be able to buy a share of a building, like a true building, from your Fidelity account. So that's what we're working on right now.
That's that's crazy. That's such a cool thing. I've noticed too as well. You mentioned in even multiple of these things, you keep using the term bridging, like bridging the gap between like these things. And I feel like there's a sense of like connection where you're trying to build and bring up other people and help other people. A thing that comes to mind for me, I think it's from the Success Principles by Jack Canfield. It's basically helping other people become successful is going to help you become successful. And I think that's something that I've heard from you using this term bridging a lot of times. Is this something that you really look for in a lot of the things that you have been working on?
That's a good question. And it comes back to thinking about what is entrepreneurship. It's creating something that solves a problem that people have. And when I say that, it's because your product or service will never be successful if there is no demand for it. Therefore, when you think about what you're trying to do, is like, are you currently solving a problem that is currently experienced, or are you trying to solve an inefficiency that people are just kind of willing to deal with? In the sense of RealBlock, we actually are solving both, right? On the asset manager side, people are like, yeah, raising capital, we'll pay a placement agent, we'll go and raise our capital ourselves. Like, people realize that is an inefficiency in the market, but they're willing to deal with it, right? So that's what we're trying to help them get rid of. On the investor side, it's a roadblock. You and I currently do not have ways to invest into commercial real estate other than investing into a real estate investment trust, which is a company that goes and buys real estate for you and manages it for you. So that's a different animal. So when you think about it, right, we're trying to find where there is demand for our services, and then we'll go and provide those services, and then that's how we make money at the end of the day, because you will use our services. And looking back at it, same thing with Siggy Pizza. My buddies and I were hungry. We were willing to pay a lot of money to feed ourselves. What if I provide a lower cost solution that's quicker? You know where you're getting your money of food is from, and you're helping your friends out because we all worked within this pizzeria. JJLD, you wanted a pet, someone else wanted to sell a snake. We helped you bridge them together. At the end of the day, yes, bridge is the right word because you're bringing people together. And something I've learned through, studying finance at Mendoza is that the world's kind of moving towards a service economy, like gone are the days of industrialization. And so you're almost always bridging services together. And so, yes, that's kind of how I think about things a lot. It's just, how do I bridge things together? How do I get rid of inefficiencies that currently stop one person working with another person?
I think that's a big key that sometimes even myself I forget to look into, where if you everyone wants to like make like the next like big thing and it's fantastic, but if you miss the part where you're bridging what like people together, essentially their problems that they have and your solution, and you're building this bridge, if you've missed that bridge and you kind of overlook the stuff just because you think that this like either the problem is like so important to solve or you think your solution is like so amazing, if you miss like this bridge together, then it ends up failing. So I think that that's a really good point that you've brought to my attention. Things is look making sure that you look for the bridge. This is super random, but I remember playing a game as a kid called Cargo Bridge, where you literally would just build bridges and then you'd need to go over and like get the product and like bring the stuff back. And I just randomly popped into my head right now, so I'm talking about it. But I think that's the importance of building a strong bridge and really putting in the time and effort to make sure that exactly like you said earlier, where you need to you want to learn as much as possible that you can learn before you go and do this stuff, and then expect that bridge essentially to fail. So like I remember randomly playing this game Cargo Bridge, where you'd have to like build out the different structures and whatnot and make sure that that's stronger before you send the person over to go and get the stuff. And then it would break, and what would happen? You'd learn from it. So I don't know how I randomly got to the point of talking about this game Cargo Bridge, but it seems like it's a pretty good analogy here for what we were talking about with bridging the gap and what entrepreneurship has to do. So
Yeah,
guys, go check out thing.
you start off building the wooden bridge, you end up then building a truss bridge, and then you go build I don't know what's after truss. So, but yeah, totally get it.
Sweet. I'm glad you got the cargo bridge analogy. Sweet. All right. Well, you also mentioned as well within this entrepreneurship space here, you said that you've pivoted a whole bunch. Tell me a little bit about some of these decisions to be able to kind of let go of what you were working on at the moment to think about moving forward with a new idea to improve it.
Yeah, for sure. I already kind of touched on the blockchain piece, and that
Mhm.
was a really tough one because love the idea of tokenization and thinking about how blockchain can be used to solve inefficiencies. But kind of going back to the bridge concept, a lot of the real estate folks that we talked to did not care what kind of technology we used. They were just focused on, is this going to get me sued? And is this going to help me make money? And if the answer was no, then they didn't really care for the technology and were actually against it. And especially if you think about how the SEC is currently prosecuting a lot of these Bitcoin companies and then blockchain companies, there was a chance that utilizing blockchain would actually hurt our reputation with these real estate folks. So that was part of the pivot, right? We had to be able to go and talk to our customers and bridge. And so again, pivoting for us, we've pivoted multiple times and it's always been in the focus of like what makes our beer taste better. That's actually I don't think my co-founder coined it, but it's something that he always talks about is like what are we doing to actually provide value to our customers and society? Because what we realize is that our customers utilize our services to make their lives more efficient, right? Like there needs to be that we're getting rid of those inefficiencies that I talked about. Therefore, they want to use our services and they're willing to pay for it. At the same time, we're trying to better society because right now, real estate's super opaque. Therefore, you see all these like high and lows. Like right now, we're facing in the commercial real estate market, especially with office space, right? No one knows what they're worth, and these assets, in St. Louis, a $260 million building just sold for $3 million. Like that's a huge swing that you should not be swinging because there's just no price transparency, right? There's no liquidity, so you're not really getting mark to market pricing. Some investors get burned. So you need more opaque, like get rid of that opaqueness and actually provide more transparency into the sector. And overall, the being able to pivot is always a good thing because it recognizes that your sunk costs are your sunk costs and your future value is your future value. Those are two different things, right? If I've spent millions of hours on doing one thing, that doesn't mean I should spend another million hours doing it. That means I need to reevaluate what I've done. And if that's been good efforts and has provided value, I should keep doing it. But if I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have created no value, I shouldn't be doing it anymore. And so we only have 24 hours in a day. You need to figure out what you're doing with those 24 hours that are actually creating value for you, the startup, and everyone else in the world. So that's kind of how I see pivots. Pivots are great, especially if they lead you to more opportunities that are more valuable. So that's how I focus on them.
I loved your part at the end about only having 24 hours in a day. And it reminded me of the thing that a saying by Alex Hermosi. Do you know of Alex Hermosi by chance?
I do not.
Okay. He wrote a couple of books here called, one of them is called $100 million Offers, and the other one is called $100 million Leads. He is like a pretty successful entrepreneur who has scaled multiple different businesses and currently runs a company called acquisition.com where he buys into, I'll actually look it up really quickly, but he buys into basically companies and like helps scale them. He pretty much does it for fun at this point, but he has a he has some experience in entrepreneurship. But one of the things that he said, I like looking into a lot of his stuff. He has a podcast as well, but I definitely check out his books for sure. $100 million offers and leads. You probably know a bunch of the stuff, but at least it's a good refresher. But one of the things that he said was, and when talking about like leverage and things that you could be working on, he said if you work super hard on like certain things, but your business isn't growing, then you need to work on other things basically. Like it's not the fact that you aren't working hard, it's the fact that you're working on the wrong things. And if you can make sure that you can work on the right things, that's whenever your business is going to scale. I think part of that has to do with pivoting, especially because we only have 24 hours in a day. Another thing that you mentioned too, also from Hermosi's book, $100 million offers, was just the concept of value and being able to provide more value to people. I loved your concept of like, what's going to make the beer taste better? What's going to make our beer taste better? What's going to make our product be better than our competitors? And what he has in his book is what he calls the value equation. So this value equation is, there's four parts. I'll flash a thing up on the screen for the people who are watching the video. But it is the dream outcome of whatever the customer is on top, and then the perceived likelihood of achievement on top. And the goals are to increase both of those. And then on the bottom, it is the perceived time delay between the start and achievement, which your goal is to decrease the thing, and then the perceived effort and sacrifice. Your goal is to decrease that one as well. So basically, what he says in this book is like, what what will I make? What's like the dream outcome? How will I know what's going to happen? The perceived likelihood of achievement. How long is it going to take? Time delay, and what is expected is your effort and sacrifice. So whenever I think of that, I think of, especially in my business with Exceptional Undergrads or in other students' businesses. And honestly, I think about this on a standpoint of just life in general, of like what I could provide value to other people, whether that's through a conversation or anything as well. Just what I can do. I mean, in my classes or whatnot, in my group projects. I know we didn't have that on the podcast, but we were talking about beforehand about how here when we're filming this in April, semesters kind of start to go crazy here, and we have a bunch of different group projects going on. But I think with this value equation, it's like, guys, like what are we looking for? What are we really trying to do for this customer or for the other people? What what do they really want to get out of this? And then how can we make it as easy as possible for them to provide them with this value that's going to help them and help us become successful in our businesses or in our group projects or anything as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's exactly the right mentality. And if I'm being honest, it took me a while to figure out, right? I approach, especially with RealBlock, it's a huge undertaking. It's not anything like I've done before. It was something I realized that it's not something you build and they'll come, because that's what we thought going in. We thought we would just be like, oh, we'll build the exchange and then people will come participate. But no, you actually have to go and demonstrate value to your said customers and those who would utilize your services, because they won't know who you are. You won't just pop up on their Google search one day or Instagram or what, LinkedIn, whatever, and they'll just be like, oh, we'll go on RealBlock Exchange. No, we have to go to them and we have to demonstrate that we're going to create value for them. And so that's a really cool way I thought about it. And I really hope a lot of people learn that quicker than I did, because it's really changed the trajectory of RealBlock, if I'm being honest.
I think myself, I had to learn that the hard way too. And I'm still trying to learn a lot of the stuff. I mean, even with having a podcast and the other stuff that I'm working on, I mean, it's hard to get people to listen to stay around. So you got to provide them with value. You got to provide them with something that people actually want to be around and hear and listen to and stick around for so they can learn things, whether that's whatever business it is, whether you're providing someone a service or a product or whatnot, what I'm doing here. And I think that's something that I'm realizing all the time anyways. I happened to actually stumble upon a buddy of mine who dropped out of college a little bit ago to go and work on a lot of social media content and YouTube and whatnot. And he stumbled upon some of the podcasts that I've had, and he was awesome enough to give me a call and kind of give me some tips on a lot of the stuff, which was fantastic. And that's something that I'm working on myself now, is trying to, just learn things from other people and take in a lot of the information. And I know I'm doing that with the podcast, but also provide reasons for people to try and stick around. I mean, I really enjoy a lot of the stuff. So I want to be able to continue to learn and share it with other people. Part of that is understanding that value equation in a lot more than just, you know, a business sense. Because that's a good thing as well for myself that I've noticed is whenever you go out and try to learn things, usually the things that you learn can be applied in other ways of your life. That's something for myself. Like I played baseball growing up a whole bunch, and I know like having a 300 average in baseball is like fantastic, and that's you failing 7 out of 10 times. So you're able to kind of take what you've learned in other places and apply them into different areas of your life, and that helps you not only help yourself learn, but also helps you connect with other people as well. And connecting with other people, I've noticed has helped myself and helped other people as well.
For sure, for sure.
All right, I know that you started off a lot of these businesses, or at least the first one with the snakes in high school, and you were able to caddy as well a little bit earlier. But what was really your mindset before college, during your childhood, and as you've kind of learned and grown since then? Or where were you
Yeah,
starting off at?
yeah, that's a good question. I think about this constantly, especially just kind of doing reflection about who I am and who I want to be. And my story really starts with my parents, if like everyone else's story, if I'm being honest. But my parents came from Poland in 2002, so about 6 months before I was born. So I grew up living the immigrant lifestyle alongside them. And if you're familiar with the traditional immigrant stories, like, hard work, my parents didn't work the most sexiest jobs, but they figured it out. They bought a house in the suburbs. They've provided a livelihood. I ended up attending Notre Dame, so God bless. But overall, I've realized that if you want something, you have to work towards it. And that's something my parents taught me. My dad works 70 hours a week in a factory. I'm very thankful he does that because I'm here today and I've seen that growing up. So when I started working at 13, it almost seemed logical at that point because my dad worked, my mom worked, my grandparents worked. Like I should have worked too to pay for what I wanted. And overall, that I would have never traded my livelihood, like childhood, for that anything else because it's made me who I am today. Right? It taught me hard work. It taught me perseverance. My parents have truly shown me that if you set yourself up for success and you really want something, you'll be able to achieve it. So that's a little bit of my story. Very thankful for my parents. They're amazing. Love them. So yeah.
Something that you brought up is just the theme of reflection. It's something that I've been working on myself for like over 2 years now through meditation and journaling. I meditate and journal like every single day, and I just kind of I'm trying to constantly reevaluate either what's going on in my life or what's happened, and to move forward from that and understand like what do I want in my life, and who am I actually, like who's Jack Slowick. And I think that's been something that's been extremely beneficial in my life, and I'm glad that you've also been able to reflect as well. I think something that I truly believe and I really think is super important is just the fact that every single decision that we've made like in our entire lives has brought us to like this moment right now where we're recording this podcast together, and it's made us and shaped us into who we are, and we have completely different stories, but we've ended up in a similar place here, at least today. And I think that there's some beauty in that, in the sense that whenever you look back, it's like a blessing in that sense. Another thing that I realized yesterday, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, it was something along the lines of the fact that where if you're trying to be like grateful for your life, you have to be grateful for both like the bad parts of your life and the good parts of your life, because all of that makes you into who you are today, and without that you'd be a completely different person. And like I said earlier, like I've struggled with, depression and being homesick and having a bunch of crazy stuff going on. And that's made me into the person today who has this podcast, who can dive into other things, into topics with other people, and build up himself and build up other people around him. And I'm just immensely grateful for all the stuff that I've been through, because it's made me who I am today. And reflection is massive. Is there anything that you do in particular to reflect on this stuff of your life and really understand where you want to go and keep yourself grounded a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I'm probably very unstructured in the way I think about reflection. I probably mentioned this before, but I really try to avoid the sunk cost fallacy at all costs, just given the fact that it doesn't help you whatsoever. It doesn't create value. But there is immense value in actually reflecting on the good and bad, as you mentioned, and thinking about who do I want to be based on those previous experiences, because you kind of get a taste of who you are based on things you have done. And so looking forward, I always try to think about new opportunities and how they correlate with previous opportunities I've had. And so,
Mm.
like, I'll provide an example. When I started Siggy Pizza, the thing I thought about was JJLD. I was providing a service. I was trying to figure out how I could create value. So I utilized my previous learnings and opportunities into the new opportunity. Or for when, I started RealBlock, I utilized what I've learned and experienced as a working in real estate private equity, but then also as a average day investor, I parlayed those into those experiences I have now. And all in all, to say, I think the bad is even more important in life, right? Because this is the finance talking in me, but you try to be risk averse when you can. And if you know where the bad opportunities lie or bad experiences lie, you should avoid them at all costs because they don't get provide value in your life. And so that's like how I think about it. It's very unstructured, and I probably should meditate or write things down, but I don't, which is a bad thing on my part. But overall, I always try to look back. I try to understand why I did some things and how I did them, and if I didn't like the outcome, why did I not like the outcome, and then I apply those things to future decisions down the line.
I think having a structure has helped me over the past few years, but I don't necessarily think that everyone needs an insane, rigorous structure of everything. I think even the fact that you are reflecting is a big success in and of itself because that will help in no matter which way you're looking through a lot of the stuff in your past. I think also that your sunk cost fallacy that you've mentioned a few times, I think that's actually something that's very important. It's like why you reflect on stuff. Because if you get so deep into this like sunk cost fallacy, which is basically like since I've thrown so much stuff in this already, like I've spent so much money into like this one thing, like I might as well continue to keep doing it. And as odd as it sounds, something that I've learned over the past little bit is, I mean, if something isn't working out and it's not making you better, it might be better for you literally to just quit and move forward. It's something that I've done since I have so many different books and book recommendations at me. If I'm reading something for a while and it is not really providing me value, instead of like I used to do, which is try and see everything through and like maybe it'll come around, I'll just stop reading the book. I'll just move forward. Or I'll do something where if I'm working on one thing one way and it's not working, then I'll just go and quit. And as weird as it sounds for me, because I've always been like, I don't ever want to say like I'm quitting or whatnot. I think specifically because of the reflection, I've been able to allow myself to quit things to make sure that I'm becoming better in other areas and doing things in a better way.
Yeah, no, I always never think about as in quitting. It's just
Mhm.
about understanding what you're doing and if they provide you value, right?
Mm.
I use the term divestiture because it goes back to the previous argument I made, of which you only have 24 hours in a day, and your time is precious because you only have a finite amount of it. Therefore, if it's not providing you value, you should diverse your, divert yourself out of it. So I don't know. I don't like to use the word quitting because I don't think quitting portrays it the right way.
That's good. I like that you like said it like that because I think that's where my hesitancy comes, where I want to have that like keep goingness. I want to have that perseverance of staying on track and like even though I understand that sometimes there is the sunken cost fallacy going on and I don't want to quit, but then sometimes I'll like be able to like quit But I think by now you switching that word and switching the context of the stuff and not calling it quitting, but just calling it like diverging and diversifying from away from what was the exact word you used? I want to
Divestiture.
get divestiture.
Yeah,
Okay. Or thinking of it as a divestiture instead of thinking of it as quitting. Because I think quitting has like a negative connotation there. But if you switch up the word and the wording, then there isn't like a potential like weight of like I quit this thing instead of having it be like I pivoted in a sense to do something else that's going to help me become more productive rather than staying on the same path that is either going to keep me in the same spot or bring me down.
for sure.
This is why I love these conversations because I had stuff where like I kind of understand it and then you just bring up something that's just like blows my mind. I'm like, oh, I should just switch it like that. Perfect. So thank you for that.
Of course.
Okay. Something I'm working on as well is scheduling and productivity. I've had both of the sides of the spectrum on this. I've had the times where I've been unbelievably unproductive, and that was mainly around my freshman year. And I've had the times where I'm unbelievably productive to the sense where I'm pretty much only working. And I'm working on kind of getting more of a balance in there right now. What is what are some of the strategies that you use to stay productive and balance out some of the life that you have going on outside of just starting up your ventures and also being at Notre Dame as a junior right now?
I am the wrong person to ask about work life balance because there is no balance.
Mm.
But so to speak, to manage productivity, I can speak on that one. And so my calendar is my Bible. I think I have that thing always pulled up and I'm just always looking at it because I schedule every minute of my day. And I think I always put myself at risk of burnout, unfortunately, just because I always try to do more. I'm like, I could always be doing more because I feel like everyone at Notre Dame does more than they should be doing. And I, at the end of the day, it just comes down to the drive of what it interests me, right? I found that classes that I see no interest in, or like I don't see how it could ever be applicable to my life, I could almost not motivate myself to do anything for it. Versus classes that are significantly interesting in the sense that they're very nuanced or have, some technical capabilities to, the startups I've been working on or just personal interests. I get so excited that like I just drop everything and go, right? And my friends always refer to it as like Jacob's in the zone because it's just like horse blinders, right? Like you're just straight down, tunnel vision. And it's a blessing and a curse, right? You're productive, but you do miss out on a lot of things. And a point I want to make is that looking like when I go do these reflections, I'm like, man, I wish I actually didn't have that tunnel vision at times because I've missed out on a lot of great opportunities in my life because I was just so narrowly focused. Yeah, I've had some successes, but if I just took a step back, sometimes I actually would have had greater successes. Like this is all make believe at this point, hypotheticals,
Mhm.
but maintaining productivity is important, but also it's trying to establish work life balance is important as well. And that's something I'm trying to work on right now. And like I started this whole little spiel. I was like, hey, I'm not the right person to ask because I'm working through it, so I don't have the answers. But things I'm trying right now is kind of again going back to my calendar, actually scheduling time to not do work. Like I just ran a half marathon the other day. Like that was fun.
Yo,
But
nice.
like I work out. I I hang out with my girlfriend a lot. I try to do so at least. Try to be a good boyfriend, and then also try to be a good brother to my younger. I have younger brothers, and I don't see them much
Mhm.
because I'm at college. So I always try to make time for them when I am at home and such. So I found the priorities in my life, and I'm trying to devote a lot of time to it. And so, not the best at work life balance, but it's something I'm trying to do. And I've actually found by actually diverging some of my time to things I really care about and like, that are not work, I've actually done a lot better work productivity wise because I come back, I'm refreshed, I'm not at risk of burnout. So my work product's better. So I would actually say that it's a really good thing to take time for yourself. And that's why I've been really pushing for it for myself, at least.
I think I had your view exactly a few months ago. And I went through like an entire thing where I kind of collapsed a little bit, honestly, because my entire theory always exactly what you said, which is like you could be doing more all the time. And like I know that because I push myself so hard in doing this and working and doing even more stuff behind it to where I would just be like, yeah, of course like I can work. And I paired that as well with like some stuff like fasting as well. I did a lot of intermittent fasting because I'd wake up, I would like not eat for like a while and I'd just work pretty much the entire time, like usually in the mornings. And I'd, of course, like working out and whatnot. I mean, I had fantastic time whenever I was doing a lot of it, but I also noticed like since I basically went all in on like only one goal that I had, and I loved it. Like I will still say this and I'll stand by it. It was some of the best times of my entire life, literally just working extremely hard and having like zero work life balance and only working. But I also realized after a little while that like I'm also now I just turned 21 like a week and a half or so ago at this point. And I realized too, like I'm growing up and like as I've reflected on stuff, I want to be able to have, other goals in my life that I need to be able to do. And as important as a lot of this other stuff is, like my businesses, as important as that is, I do also want to prioritize other stuff. So I ask you that question like literally struggling trying to figure all the stuff out myself. And I that's
Yeah,
why I ask like
it's
I'm
tough.
like it's very tough because like I mean I had this discussion with a buddy of mine over breakfast the other day. We are expected nowadays to be at 100%, at or near 100%, pretty much 24/7 in everything that you're doing, and it can be very tough, especially whenever you have expectations of yourself like I do, where I hold myself to a higher standard than like basically anybody else, and that's a very tough thing. So I ask questions like this to see different tactics, not only for other people to potentially listen to and hear that they could use, but I mean for myself as well. Like I want to learn how to do this stuff because I know for sure like I don't want to go out there and put in like half effort on any of the stuff that I'm doing. So I need to figure out a way to be able to put full effort into other things as well and really prioritize stuff. I think that reflection has helped that as well. And I think that it's something that, we have to work on and it's tough, honestly. It's tough.
Yeah, for sure. I always like struggle with the thought of doing something 50% of the way. And it's
Mhm,
just like I always want to be 100% in.
mhm.
And you can't be 100% in on multiple things. You have to really pick. And so, again, that reflection is just important to figure out what is that important thing to focus 100% on. So, agreed.
I think the calendar aspect as well. You said the calendar is like your Bible there. I done the exact same thing for myself. If you were to pull up my calendar right now, it would be very little white space. I throw in basically everything in there, which is fantastic. I've noticed for my productivity it has worked extremely well. And I think part of that is whenever you have that block of time in your calendar, like I'll put in like work periods or whatever, or I'll have like whatever it is on my calendar or classes and whatnot. Anything that's in that calendar, it's 100% for that thing at that time. And then any of the other times you can not worry about the rest of the stuff. That's something that I'm working on right now for myself in terms of just working really hard and giving 100% at that thing that's on the calendar during that calendar time block.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. It's one of the toughest things to do.
It's easy whenever you just narrow it down to one thing and you put on those horse blinders, like you said. It's very easy. Like I will say, and you could get completely. I use the term you said like in the zone. I use the term like dialed in all the time, and like that flow state, like you're just into it. Whenever you only have one thing, it's like, yeah, this is awesome. But it's kind of learning nowadays for myself to still put on those blinders, but like in certain periods of time for certain things. It's tough. Yeah.
Extremely tough.
Already. I'd like to ask you here as well. What are some resources that you've used to gain some of these skills in entrepreneurship in real estate? Any sort of books or podcasts that you would recommend either myself or other people to check out if we want to learn more?
Yeah, so I'm currently looking up at a little book collection I have on top of my desk, and a really good book, even if you're not a finance guy like me, What It Takes by Steve Schwarzman,
Mm.
co-founder of Blackstone. And as you can kind of infer by title, What It Takes is that if you really want something, you're going to do a lot to get it. And I think that was always a really inspirational thing, just thinking about like, how do you go about starting a business? How do you go about devoting yourself to something you're really passionate about? Other books that I would actually recommend: The Year Money Grew on Trees. And this is a book I read when I was in fourth grade. And this is not a book that you'll probably find anywhere anymore because I've tried to find it. But essentially, it was my first experience of entrepreneurship. This book was about a group of kids who stumbled upon an abandoned apple orchard, and they asked the owner if they could like just take care of it, and they ended up selling the apples by the road, and they made their money, and they expanded operations. Like, this is a book I read in fourth grade, but when I think about like what do I want in my life, like what excites me is that opportunity to take something, make it yours, and actually then drive value. It's funny that a book I read in fourth grade drives my whole life philosophy, but that's a book I recommend anyone interested in reading, especially since you probably can't even find on Amazon anymore. I've tried.
I'm gonna be looking so hard for that book. I can't wait to try and find it. I'm gonna find it and I'll be like, Jacob, I found it and it's right here. And
Oh,
then
I
you'll
just
have
found it
it.
on Thrift Books. Perfect.
Seriously?
20 bucks. Yeah.
Let's go. Can you send me that link?
Yep.
Not right now, but afterwards.
All right.
That's
Sounds good.
awesome. Look at you. Perfect. Already.
I'm trying to think of like any good podcasts, but if I'm being honest, I
Mhm.
am not the one who listens to podcasts. I'm the one who go and reads the transcript. Just
Yeah.
I'm sometimes I'm like just like talk a little faster. I can understand you. Go a little faster. Like I'm just like I like reading at my own pace, and so yeah, I read a lot of articles. You know, I read a lot of Wall Street Journal if I'm being honest. So it's always interesting to see how
Hmm.
people are approaching things.
That's cool. The podcast part for you, I want to try and put you on this potentially. There's an AI, it's called Tammy AI, where it basically gives you points of YouTube videos. So like if I were to go into YouTube and put on like a podcast video, this is what I usually do sometimes. And I'll put on the podcast of whatever it is, and then it's like an AI thing, and it will generate you a full like summary of everything, of all like the points of all the stuff, so you could just read it through and get the general gist of a lot of the stuff. If I'm listening to an actual podcast nowadays, it's usually in 2 times speed, because either 1.5 or 2 times speed, because I'm usually doing other stuff. So I'm getting like a lot of the information that I have, and then I'm working on the other stuff that I'm doing. I've noticed that it helps me like pick parts through. But sometimes if I'm just sitting there talking the entire time, and I'm listening to podcasts all the time because I'm either editing these or I'm speaking with other people, it's a constant flow of information, or I'm reading stuff. And sometimes I'll listen to audiobooks. That's actually a hack that I don't know why it took me so long to figure out, but listening to a bunch of things. So sometimes I'll throw the podcast in 2 times speed to not get through it a little bit quicker, but keep me interested, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for sure. I found that sometimes the faster someone's speaking, the more intently I listen because like I'm just trying to
Mm.
make sense of it. Versus when it's super slow, I'm just kind of like fall into this false sense of lull where I don't have to listen too much. So it's actually really interesting, and I'm glad I'm not the only one who has to listen to something faster to actually pay attention to it. So it's good to know.
For sure. All right, my last question here for you, Jacob, is what advice would you give to other undergrads who are looking to excel in their own lives? Any sort of advice you got, go for it.
Seek mentorship. I
Mm.
always talk about my caddying story, and I received the Chick Evans scholarship, which allowed me to come to Notre Dame on a full ride scholarship. So that's one thing that I'm very thankful for caddying. But even if it wasn't for the Chick Evans scholarship, caddying transformed my life because it introduced me to only successful people who wanted me to succeed on and off the golf course. And as a result, these people became my mentors. I personally know every single member I caddied for. I have about 50% of their phone numbers, and I talk to them on a pretty regular occurrence basis. And so when you think about that, that's a huge support group that always wants you to do well. And coming to Notre Dame, same thing. I have so many alum that I know that just want me to succeed one way or another. And they will go out of their way to help me one way or another. And so for me, it's always been mentorship because I would have never been the person I am today if someone didn't believe in me, if someone didn't tell me that I could do it, and then someone would help me do it, said something. And that's changed my whole perspective on life. It's just like, hey, you can do something. And someone's going to be like, yeah, you can do it. Go do it. And so very thankful for all the mentors in my life. The list would be too long to list every single name, but you know who you are, so thank you. And off that tangent to the next tangent is that I strive to be a mentor for others. And I realize that I'm suddenly kind of getting into this position where I actually can be an effective mentor, right? I have a younger brother who's a freshman in high school. I can help him mentor, think about like, hey, here's what I did wrong in high school. Here's what you shouldn't do in high school. Learn from my mistakes. Do better in that sense. Or even like I'm vice president of our real estate program here at Notre Dame. So a lot of that, my duties right now serve as mentoring to underclassmen in recruiting, thinking about discernment within the real estate minor and real estate, practicum. And then also thinking about just how to approach general school, especially in real estate product. And I've realized that I can make a huge difference in anyone's life that they want a mentor. And I always try to find as many people I can mentor, but at the end of the day, it's people who want to be mentored are the ones who will come and get my advice. And so if anyone's listening to this right now, it's like be open to mentorship because people want to help mentor because people are like me who realize that they've been helped by mentors and they want to give back. And it's shocking to me that how many people don't want to be mentored. So be mentored, be a mentor, and always double your whatever you receive. So that's what I'll end it off on.
I love that. That's something that I want to do. Just seek out mentors. What are your suggestions for seeking out mentors? Should we just be going on LinkedIn, just like randomly messaging out to people, networking through other people? What's a strategy that you would say that we could, or myself or other people could potentially employ to get a mentor?
Yeah, no, the best mentors you have are ones who want to see you succeed. And when you think about that, why do people want to succeed? It's usually because of a common interest, a common connection, or some sort, right? So for me, caddying, I had a really personal connection with a lot of these people because I was on their bag. I spent a lot of time with them, and we got to know each other. So very personal connection. And my Notre Dame mentors, we share the link of being at Notre Dame. We're domers. We all have the same class rings, and so therefore we look out for each other like as siblings. And that's something that can't ever be broken. So when people ask me about that, it's about finding commonality, right? If I want to be in real estate, I should probably try to do something instead real estate and then get to see who I can know within the sector, right? Because you'll never know who will find you'll ever run into or you'll find out about, and you suddenly just start a conversation and you continue that. Because the best mentors are ones who are you're organic. You got to be organic. You cold emailing someone doesn't really help unless you have a common connection. Just being honest, and you got to build that relationship, and it's not something you ask for. You just end up receiving. And so that's how I approach it. Like the best mentorship I've never asked for, I just received it, and that's how I hope to give to others. It's just by giving.
Full circle there to the bridging from earlier in the beginning of the podcast. Think it's fantastic to end it there. Jacob, thank you so much for your time. I'm really glad to have you here. I really enjoyed speaking with you here for the past hour or so. And yeah, would you like to finish us off with anything else that we might have missed that you would like to say?
Yeah, no, Jack, thank you for having me, and for anyone who's actually wanted to listen to me for so long, speaking wise. I would say overall, if you're passionate about something and you truly want to do good, do it, especially if you think you can do it. If and if you even don't think you can do it, at least try, because you actually might end up being able to do it. So that's where I'm going to leave it off of. So thanks again, Jack. Really appreciate your time.
Of course, Jacob. Thank you. Guys, you can do it. If anyone says it, if no one's telling you that you can do it, no one's believing in you. I got you. I don't know about Jacob here, but I
You can
believe
do
in
it,
y'all.
guys.
We got it. We can do it. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Exceptional Undergrads. If you found inspiration in today's episode, head on over to our website, exceptionalundergrads.com, for our show notes and resources from all of our episodes. We're always looking for new undergrads to feature on future episodes. If you'd like to apply, hit the Apply Here page on our website, and we'll get back to you soon. And as always, be the exception.